Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. You're watching Sky 847. This is Safia TV, and this is It Takes Two with myself, Bilal, Hugh, and my co-host, Ruby Sowah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. This week we're joined by Sheikh Ahmed Haneef. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. And this is a program where we explore the challenges that naturally occur in marriage and try to help you come up with solutions to move forward in your relationships. Let's jump into the first scenario, if I may. And it's from a mother. It reads, I am very worried about my son. Derek takes two. I am very worried about my son. He is 10 years old and is starting to hear voices. He has an episode every so often where he starts talking to himself, and then all of a sudden he begins to speak in a different language and even a different tone of voice. It's very frightening, and it has now taken a toll on my marriage. Why has this happened to my only son? Why is God doing this to me? I feel as though he has forsaken me and my family. I pray, I give zakat, I give khums, and I fast, and I do all my wajibat, and I am tired of getting told that this is my test. I need and want something else. I want support. And this is from Fed Up in London. This is Ruby. This is an unusual type of letter, right?
Well, is it really? I mean, we have examples of this in Christian churches where people, children, adults are suddenly have out-of-body experience, so to speak. I think what she needs to do, first of all, is get some help, professional help. I'm not talking about religious help, but I'm talking about professional help. This is something that needs to be discussed with the GP. We don't know, for all we know, this child may have some personality disorder, this child may have some mental health issues, or it could be a mere fact. Many children, especially at that age, have incidences of they have imaginary friends, or they pretend that they become somebody else and they start speaking differently and becoming differently. So I think it's very important not to jump into the conclusion that there might be some witchcraft, there might be some body possession or whatever. There's a lot of research that has been done into, mental health issues and disabilities, or just how children play. We don't know. So I think some behavior psychologist, but first point would be for me is to go and see a professional, a GP, and try and get some answers, because from the tone of the letter it seems that she's looking at it from a very spiritual perspective, and
spirituality may not be the only answer, right?
Well, that's it, and we don't.
Assessment might help.
Exactly, and there's no shame in it. Everybody in this world has some kind of issue or something that they're dealing with. So I think she doesn't have to tell the whole world. I think she just needs to go to a healthcare professional and explore those avenues first. And then if there are no answers, then we can bring it into the community and see who we can, because I don't think she's the only person who's gone through this, No,
there's more. There's more. Sheikh, I can't help thinking about this as a psychiatric or psychological issue, and think about, the different tests or screenings that might be helpful for the young child. But are there spiritual elements that can trigger this type of thing, and how, why, how do we challenge them on that point?
I think by the time by saying spiritual elements, I think you might mean occult elements.
Occult, Djinn, this type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, Djinn possession, okay, is a phenomenon that Islam sees a reality in, okay? And it's not like a Djinn is going into your body, okay? It's about an effect upon your mind, okay? This is a possibility, but it's rare, really, especially in an environment like this, okay? Because also, I mean, the word majnoon, which is used to mean insane, okay, literally means jinn possessed, okay? What it means then is that in the absence of advanced psychiatric knowledge in psychology, lots of people who displayed signs of insanity, okay, were considered to be possessed by Djinn. I believe that the first approach to this has to be a psychological one, a psychological or psychiatric one, okay, because it could indicate, I'm no expert in psychology, or in psychiatry and so on, but it could indicate things like personality disorders, from personality disorders to schizophrenic types of behavior.
Bipolar, yeah.
Okay. When she's saying this person, the child speaks in a different language, what language, right? I think if you could explore that, you know, one could be able to identify whether it's a psychological problem or not, because any kind of unexplained vocalizations, right, could be assumed to be another language. You see, so I think this sister is thinking in a particular box that she needs to come out of, right?
Okay.
You know, and I think basically, quite possibly, it's a psychological problem.
I think it's really important, especially in the time that we live in, that medical options are sought, especially if they are available. And in the West they are, psychological evaluation, pediatrics, behavioural stuff, behavioural modification, rather than jumping to conclusions. I think when we jump to conclusions, it's not only the child, but the family can be labelled, and they can be often, because people don't know how to deal with things, ostracised, etc. And the child could, that label could stay on the child. So I think it's really important to seek medical and professional help. The sister said she wanted support. I think support needs to come from her partner and her family. And this is not something that you want to be shouting from the rooftops.
No.
Especially if you don't know what you're dealing with, and what your, you know, educational repertoire is. Maybe in her culture, I don't know where she's from, this is common, like in certain African cultures, Asian cultures, Oriental cultures. Anytime there's an issue, you get an illness, it's always the Djinn, you know, or somebody's done some kind of witchcraft on you or something.
They put a Djinn on me,
Exactly. And a lot of the times we can get ourselves into situations where we're so obsessed with, you know, elements that we're unaware of, that we tend to label anything that we can't understand as being jinny or you know, some kind of witchcraft. But honestly, go and talk to your GP. GPs are great as a first option to... Good
protocol. Good protocol.
Exactly.
As a first protocol. Sheikh, are there any historical records or, you know, accounts of, say, for example, Muslim people in general, like getting possessed of jinns, and how has that played out? Is it like not to say a case study, but, you know, something that we have in the books to say this is what happened?
Yeah, there are many anecdotal types of records and stuff like that about that type of thing. You know, I mean, from human beings marrying jinn to, you know, human beings being possessed by jinn and so forth. You know, but you know, I think in the modern period, you find less of that type of thing taking place, right? That type of idea, that type of phenomenon tends to occur more in a kind of a traditional context or a non-modern context, where you have the sort of a cultural support, okay, for that type of activity, you know. And you, for example, again, on another level, you find that areas where the Djinn world intersect with this present world, you know, has a lot to do with the naturalness of the environment in which you live. You see, for example, in Islamic teachings and so on, you find that Jinn tend to be found more in wastelands, you know, in the desert.
Okay.
You see, less so in populated areas. You see, so if, for example, you want to talk
Forests
about forests and that type of thing, you know, so if you want to talk about interfacing with Jinn, you have to be talking about societies that are situated in these types of environments, which tend to be more natural type of environments, you see. In modern environments like this, you find less of that, exactly, less of that taking place, right? So there's a very high possibility that this is actually a psychological or psychiatric issue rather than an issue of jinn possession.
Isn't there an emergence of this New Ageism in the society, in the modern society, and people, you know, because of New Ageism and a kind of vacuum of spirituality entering into their cult, and I don't know, this is movies or different things, but are maybe calling up or triggering certain elements.
Well, there are people who dabble with those types of things, right? But it's not like the movies, they open a portal for the demon world or anything like that. People who dabble in these types of things bring these things upon themselves. They don't bring it up in the world to let loose on the rest of humanity. That type of thing, you know.
So in all different cultures and religious scriptures, we have examples of unexplained phenomena happening, and we're not saying that we don't acknowledge those, but I think we have to be very clear and listen to the times that we're in with the support, because you have so many horror stories where people are, you know, giving these children things to eat and telling them to do such and such behavior or do this, that and the other, which are quite detrimental. So I really want to, I'm not saying that I don't acknowledge the phenomena that we have. Allah's created so many things that we're not aware of, but I think there's an explanation to most things, and I want to kind of stay away from the topic of what should we do? Should we pray on them? Should we give them some water from, I don't know, France or something that would cure them, and look at a more scientific explanation. And if that doesn't work, then that's something to be discussed. But I think it's really dangerous to try and think of it as something other than it probably is.
Even if we perceive it, we classify it or at least make the assumption it may be some kind of psychological, psychiatric type of issue. Why do these type of things, I know many people will ask this, why do these type of things happen to religious people? The sister says, I pay my zakah, my combs, I pray, I fast. Why me? Why me? Why me?
Well, I wouldn't say why does this happen to religious people. I think psychiatric or psychological problems happen to people, you know. But yes, she's saying, why me? Yeah. I pray, I fast, I do all kinds of things, and this is what you're going to do to me, God? Well, hey, you know, why did Imam Hussein alayhi salam not cry, why me? Right? When he was losing everything, okay? His family was being wiped out, okay? He was going to be killed and murdered, you know, with his spiritual level and closeness to God. Right, with all the benefits, the spiritual benefits that Allah has given him. As an Imam, yeah. Right? Yeah. He is more important to say, why me? Imam Ali alayhi salam is more important for him to say, why me? Okay? I think there are people who have to be careful about their sincerity in worship, you know, of why they are practicing their religion. Some people practice their religion and think that you know, they would have no problems in life. And I think that is very naive, you know, because I remember us talking in different programs, you know, about the role of suffering, okay, the role of difficulty in life, that it has a role to play in the formation of the human character, you see, and also it has a role to play in God's justice, in us being compensated for the bad things that we have done. That in this world we can get difficulties, and it is better for us to have it in this world than in the next world, and so on. You know, and this person should realize that if, for example, they stop worshiping God and so forth, right? There's no guarantee that this will remove their problems. Right? It might even increase their problems.
Wow. I would agree. This thing of, I think when people say, why me, it's an expression of being exhausted and just frustrated with the situation.
Despair, I think.
And
despair,
and my thing is, why not you then? Who should it be? Who should it be happening to? But the point is, I think that, you know, she's frustrated, it's hard. Where do you go? I mean, how do you even... prepare yourself for when this child's going to have an episode. Is it going to be an episode in public? Is it going to be, you know, you're always worried about the reaction of other people towards a situation that you don't understand. But I think that, you know, if you didn't have your prayers and you didn't do your zakat and you didn't do all these things, those things probably provide you with a emotional crutch that you know that you're doing everything that you're meant to do, but you're faced with a problem. And if you weren't doing those things, would you ask yourself, well, is it because I didn't do this? Is it because I didn't do that? Yeah. So, you know, there's no need to despair. You're not the first. This is what human beings do. We always presume that we're the first, we're the only people. And very rarely in time are we afflicted with things that only one person in time. Like the Elephant Man, you know, there's no other record that somebody had his kind of disabilities. But that's not to say that someone after him won't have it. So I think, you know, with life you've just got to try the best with what you have, but there are medical resources out there. And, you know, you've got the internet, Google, talk to people, and inshallah there should be a way out.
I think it's important as well that the couple speak to each other, because, you know, the sister mentions that it's taking a toll on their marriage. So it's really important that they take time out for themselves as a couple and to support each other and communicate and keep that going as well, because that, in the stress of it all, you know, you wouldn't want to know that they turned in on themselves. So they have to really remember that they are a couple.
Yes. And that they're not getting psychological counseling.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't seem to be any kind of psychological counseling taking place.
Offload or somewhere to go and have some sort of support, whether it's clinical counseling or even just to have a place to go and get that off your chest.
Well, maybe, you know,
like a debrief, you know?
Their parenting styles are different. You know, he's like, sit down, be quiet. She can't control the environment. You know, maybe it's affecting their day-to-day lives. Like when we go out, we're in the middle of Sainsbury's, is he gonna start acting whatever? Is he gonna look at me like, where is this from? A lot of the times, you know, you're finger pointing. Is it something you did? Is it something, you know, it's hard, but they need to continue. This is a team effort. It's going to take a lot of effort from all sides, and even religiously, just to give them that support, the community, if they want it, to know that
and to
we will
continue
help
to fast and continue to pray.
Exactly.
Sheikh, do we have exorcism and possession? I mean, not possession, but do we have exorcism? This idea of exorcism in you know, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, as Muslims, but within the Shia school in particular, is there a kind of concept of?
Yes.
Okay. Could you say?
Are you going to divulge?
Could you elaborate, because I'm gripped.
I'm not very much versed in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But there is the concept does exist. Okay. Because one of the, as you said, sometimes people take it as a first, when there's a sort of mental health problem or something like that, people take it as a first port of call.
I think it's a cultural thing as well. It depends on what region. I know in the Middle East, you know, they're heavily based on, you know, there's a cure for everything. If you go on ziyarat, it will cure things. If you drink this type of water, it depends on who you talk to. It's like Chinese whispers. If you do 50 of these and 10 of those, then it should cure everything. I think each culture has their own way. If you rub this oil, I know like in a lot of African cultures, if you rub this oil with frankincense and this thing and you chant this, then this will work. And if you take the child here, and
I've heard all kinds of stuff, but it's hard to know what is, you know, authentic. You say, oh, you write down certain ayats of the Quran with saffron, and then you wash it off and drink the water.
But, you know, again, I just find
stuff.
I really want to stay away from things like that, because a lot of the time you feel overwhelmed and pressured, and it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, then you're still left with the problem. So I'd rather take the medical route.
No, I hear that the medical.
And if they don't have an answer, then we'll take
traditional ways, okay, of dealing with a lot of problems. Okay, like when I say traditional, I mean traditional Islamic ways of dealing with a lot of problems. One major way of dealing with problems is with dua. Okay, now it depends upon what our headspace is when we apply these solutions, whether it is to write something in saffron, the wood, and drink it with water. It all depends upon how you're thinking, right? A large part of it is commitment, all right? Commitment or sincerity to the act that you're doing, okay? If you're not sincere to this act that you're doing, if you're doing this act with doubt, for example, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I don't think it's only for that. I think it happens with medicines as well. Okay, you could be taking a medicine and thinking it's a placebo, right? And because you think and you're convinced that it's a placebo and it wouldn't work, you know, your psychology itself doesn't make it work. Right? It's a drug that can help you, but you don't believe it works, it's not going to work. You see? So I think, you know, if you want to deal with divinely sanctioned cures, okay, one of them is our medical establishment. It's our medical establishment. Why is it a divinely sanctioned cure? Because Allah has given all of us the tools to cure our problems.
Okay.
Right? So, you have a wound that can get infected or whatever, right? Allah puts penicillin in the world. Okay? For that, a man comes and discovers the penicillin, and he applies the penicillin for this particular wound. All right? Now, among these cures, they have different levels. Okay? That penicillin for infection is more powerful, more rapid in its effect than a dua. Right? You know, so if you're going to put aside that for this, put aside penicillin for a dua, okay, you're not using your reason. You see? Right? This person, this kid has a mental problem, a psychological problem. Okay? We have a psychological cure for this.
There's a model, there's child psychologist.
Exactly. Right? I think this parent has not mentioned taking that child, you know, to professional help because they're not in that headspace.
Or they might feel that there's nobody out there that will understand from where they're coming from culturally.
Well, you see, that's another type of a thing
correct,
in the
and that's a barrier though, that becomes a barrier.
You see?
Yeah.
But also I'd like to state that, as we know, there's so many people, charlatans out there, that is basically a money-making scheme for a lot of people.
Wow.
Where they will, there's basically a dua or remedy, and we know this in certain parts of the world, that if you have enough money and you have enough commitment, that you're willing to do anything. Throw this in the river, when it's the moon's this way, go and stand in it and do whatever. But when people are, and they prey upon people that are desperate, or you know, people who there are no answers to their issues yet. And that's what medicine and science is. We don't have the answers for everything, but we're pretty clued up, and there's always research that's being done. And I've seen so many people who've gone around the world wearing emlets, you know, doing crazy stuff in the name of, you know, religion, because this is going to cure their child. And what do you find out? The child has bipolar. And you've now spent thousands, hundreds, filling somebody else's pockets when you could have gone to a GP.
It's not just the money, because there are, as you said, this is an area where there's a lot of people who prey on the vulnerable. And you know, you look at the back of certain newspapers, and
who are
they
even
got Dr.
quite
So and so,
religious,
Dr. So, Sheikh, so, you know, but and I've been curing this for this long, and you don't really know their intention and maybe the extra harm. If it was just the loss of money, it'd be one thing, but the extra harm that they can possibly cause.
Exactly, and the devastation that you feel afterwards. There's so many, you know, quirky people out there that will give you, you know, there's a recipe or there's a dua for everything. And really it's like, well, no, if you've got cancer, maybe you need to go and see a doctor and see, you know, make some choice decisions. Are you going to go the homeopathic route, or are you going to do the scientific medicine route? What are you going to do? But, you know, DARs do work, but I think we need to also use the resources that we have. So I'm completely against go and see some charlatan or some soothsayer to, you know, because they make it look good because it's religious.
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
veneer
no.
of religiosity. What about alternative methods? Not saying that we're going to start endorsing those things, but what's your thoughts about you know, homeopathic or other ways
think
of approaching
people should,
problem
what's the saying, there's lots of ways to skin a cat. I think people need to make informed decisions. Medicine, traditional medicine, some people believe by it wholeheartedly that it works. Other people will tell you it's just some chalk. It's the psychology that makes you think it's working. Chinese medicine, same thing. I really think you should do your research. Try all avenues that you have so you feel confident that you've tried everything and see what works for you. What works for me might not work for the next person. I'm not going to say don't try alternative medicine. I am going to say I really don't believe in sitting there and blowing 50 fatahas in a bottle of water that's going to necessarily give you a miracle answer. It might do for that person, but that might be their luck, you know. I'm always try everything as long as it's not harmful to you. But you know, seek remedies. You know, thank God we have the internet. It's so easy to communicate. I know of a friend who had a disease that there was hardly any information in the UK about, but in America there were pioneering studies about it. So she was able to get in touch with the specialists and people who had gone through that. You know, thank God we're in the time we're in that getting information is literally at the click of a finger, whereas before it was hard. And just go online, look at people who've gone through the same thing, but go to your GP. People are not going to think you're crazy. Social services aren't going to be called. You're not going to lose your child. But this needs to be managed, because if the school may pick up on it, people in the community, your neighbours, you don't know. If you think about autism before, and you would see a child that was throwing a temper tantrum, before you would just say that child's naughty or wouldn't listen. And then we had a definition that, you know, there's so many spectrums to autism. It could be behavioural, they don't look at you. But before, I'm sure you would have people who would tell you to do, you know, blow 50 things in a grain of rice and give it to the child or something, you know.
Now there's different ways to develop. Sheikh, what's your thoughts about this, like homeopathic, naturopathic medicine, or even like herbal? You know, you have a lot of people now promoting herbal remedies and things like this, because I mean there is a link even in the scientific literature now talking about food and mood. So even some things can be allergic reactions, so it can be caused by links to caffeine or additives in food. You know, young people have been even, there's stories to say that there's pesticides that have triggered ADHD or certain things. It's like the gene exists in a person dormant. They come into contact with this type of food and it triggers various things in them. What's your thoughts about that type of?
Homeopathic medicine, if you want to rule out from that word or that categorization, snake oil and fake medicine.
Yeah.
Homeopathic medicine is quite a legitimate form of medicine. Okay, take for example acupuncture. Acupuncture is a kind of a homeopathic medicine. Yeah. You know, I think there's no doubt that acupuncture works for many conditions, not everything, right? Chiropractic was once considered to be homeopathic, or considered to be outside of the
orthodox
orbit of orthodox medicine. I think in the UK it's still considered to be sort of like something out there on the margins. In places like Canada and so on, it's quite now integrated in the medical system as a form of medical treatment. You know, Ayurveda, which is a very ancient form of Indian medicine, right, is still quite viable in today's society. Qigong, which is another Chinese form of martial art, both internal and external. Right? This is also a type of homeopathic type of a thing, dealing with energies and so forth. These things are quite real, you know. So I think, I don't think we should dismiss homeopathic medicine. In terms of dealing with psychological issues, however, right, because of my ignorance, I don't know of traditional means by which people deal or dealt with psychological issues. I do know in Muslim Spain they had a great tradition of using music to cure or alleviate certain psychological...
To create a mood in the individual. Sound can create mood, right?
Yeah.
You have that now in medical science, music therapy.
Okay, and we're talking about 1,000 years ago or so that they had this.
Yeah.
You see? So, yeah, I mean, I think homeopathic medicine is something that we should not overlook.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
We just, when we get into these questions, the time just goes just like this. So I'd like to thank you both for your contributions, and maybe Sheikh, if you can leave the sister with just a word.
Well, I would encourage the sister to seek medical help, or to be more precise, seek psychological or psychiatric help for her son, because I think this is the major issue, right? I also advise her to do not put her hopes in such a fragile position that you have to ask yourself, why is God doing this to me? I think one way of counteracting that is to look at the sufferings of the prophets, of the imams, alayhim salam, you know, and see that they're the beloved of God, right? And they also went through more pain and suffering that we can ever imagine. I think these two things, I think, should help her on the way.
Inshallah, yeah. I mean, thank you, Sheikh, for your wise words, and thank you, Sister Ruby, for your contributions, and thank you all for staying with us for the duration of It Takes Two, and we hope to see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
If you have any questions or queries that you would like to send to It Takes Two, please email us at ittakes2@safirtv.com.